I'm Candy. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Idaho, and this is going to be a short video addressing the topic of complicated grief, which might also sometimes be talked about as traumatic grief, but we're going to separate out those ideas a little bit. I would suggest that if you're pretty curious about this topic or going to be working with folks who might be having this presentation or going through this process, is to watch part 2 of the Essentials of Neurobiology that I have listed on this channel, addresses memory and trauma, as well as part 3 on the pacing of therapy. So those two videos will help give you a little deeper understanding of trauma work, kind of what's involved and what the client has to go through, kind of what that journey looks like. But you can also watch, there is a unlisted video, and I'll put that link in the description below, that just talks about providing companioned care for someone who is grieving. So it talks about the concept of the grief journey. And between these sets of videos, you may find additional answers or sort of kind of round off this whole topic a little bit. This video is going to be pretty specific, so just suggest that. So complicated grief, there are essentially two reasons why grief might be complicated. The first is that the person is experiencing difficulty or feeling stuck from moving through the processes of grief. A lot of times you hear grief talked about in stages. The unlisted video will kind of walk you through that, how to conceptualize the grief process in reality. But for complicated grief, anytime someone gets stuck and they're just not moving forward, they're feeling stuck, is what you will hear folks say. Anytime they're feeling stuck, we could be moving into complicated grief. A lot of times that is designated by the amount of time. So if someone has had a loss and there's no movement in how they're doing their adjustment to the reality of this loss over time. So if we're 2 years in and the person is still battling with like denial and overwhelm with the loss, then that's complicated grief. The other way that grief can be complicated is if there are traumatic elements in the loss or the death, such as accident, injury. If it's a sudden loss, the age of the person, all the things that you might think of when we hear about it and we kind of go, oh, that's awful, right? It's taking the fact that losing someone is bad enough, but it's adding this whole nother layer of shock, traumatic injury, unexpectedness, and just the loss of this person in the circumstances, right? So a lot of times you might hear this called traumatic grief, and traumatic grief is almost always complicated, right? It's kind of by definition complicated by the trauma. So we have this whole grief process that the person is going through, but then we've got layered on top of that another process which on their own would require good support, but when you combine them together, things get difficult, right? So with traumatic grief, trauma processing usually needs professional support. Now that's not to say someone might have some success using like online resources or workbooks and things like that. Totally can be true. Professional support can also look like a counseling support group, or a 12-step group of some sort, also just individual counseling. The reason why those are so helpful is because they offer structure that helps the bereaved person find their footing or sort of their place on the map in the grief journey. And this can kind of help ease the overwhelm and the sense that this pain will never end, right? So it's just really giving us the support that we need to move forward, even if that moving forward journey still has a lot of work to it. So with complicated grief, maybe it doesn't have a specific trauma associated with it. The process, though, of getting through this process, right? A big component when we have a regular grief process, but it has become stuck and it's become complicated, then emotional expression is going to be a key component for that person. because I'll talk about that in just a second. But emotional expression, just keep that in mind, that when someone is stuck, emotional expression is often the area where we need to go into, right? Also, the support of someone is going to help the person orient the bereaved person with what they've experienced so far, what it feels like is standing in the way for them, right? Those two things. Having support of someone can help me kind of go, well, this is what I've already been through, but I just can't get past whatever it happens to be. What do I feel like is standing in the way for me, expressing and grieving this loss? So often it is the facing of deep emotional pain. And that's why the emotional expression becomes a key component. If we haven't expressed that emotional pain, or really what gets blocked is we block ourselves from being able to feel what the loss means to me personally, how the loss has affected me personally. So a lot of times I'm kind of in my head with it, like I process things like, it was just their time, or I might come to some faith conclusions. I might cognitively have understanding of what happened, but still feel like I can't let it go. I can't move through it. Right? That would be because I maybe have not had the felt sense in my body, in my heart, of really emotionally facing the pain of this loss. And that can be a place that I fear to tread and that I really need support. So these are kind of the two components of complicated grief. I highly recommend go watch the other videos, and I think it'll help you put together all of these pieces so that if you find yourself getting stuck in your grief or feeling overwhelmed by physical symptoms associated with a traumatic loss, or if you're just feeling like if you are the one that is working with someone, walking with someone who is going through grief and they seem to be stuck or having some of these symptoms, that might give you a little bit more context and conceptualization of where can you fit in and when might we need to have professional help and structure for that person. Hope this is helpful. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.